Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Pokémath. My name is Stefan Eriksson and today in episode number 55, we've gotten pretty far since last time I think. I am joined by, well, this guy needs no introduction, but it is Sander Wojcik, the control guy himself. And today we're going to be talking about not so much about the tournament run, but more about the deck he did a fantastic run with at the recent NAIC, namely the V-UNION Mewtwo deck. Fantastic fun deck, and a lot of people got very surprised, but that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Sander, and thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a play. It's almost a tradition at this point. Debriefing with Steph.
I think it's super cool. I sent a message, hey Sander, you did a cool thing with this deck here, or made a really great run again.
It is.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. I mean, first of all, I think what should be pointed out is this is like one of the few times that I actually didn't come up with the deck itself.
You're absolutely correct. This is something.
It's been like years since I've played a list that I felt like wasn't really my list, but this definitely was Mees Brenninkmeijer, another Dutch player. I mean,
fantastic,
It was the Mewtwo V-UNION was his idea. What kind of happened was we were bouncing off a lot of ideas with each other. We just, every card in the format we touched upon, is this worth it? And we kind of were working on a control deck, and then at some point we already I really liked the Celine Palpet Yeltier loop, and I thought it was stronger than Eldegoss, because I thought Eldegoss is really strong if you have a very specific supporter you want to loop every single turn. Like if you want to chill and scare or channel for specifically every single turn, then the Eldegoss loop is great. But in general, I thought that being able to attack and also Celine Palpet Yeltier constantly was actually a more versatile and actually better way to generate resources, because you can't take any card back with Celine. And then Mees actually came up with he was like, why don't we he was like, oh, I have a crazy idea, why don't we play Mewtwo? And then we
Mewtwo?
thought about it a bit, and it actually it handles Palkia and Arceus in specific extremely well.
I remember every time we were discussing also control deck for previous events, the biggest issue was always you could handle one of the big decks, but you couldn't handle the other one. And that was typically the problem we ran into with Eldegoss. I remember that. And now this whole complete super many props and everything to Mees, that's a fantastic idea, this. And evidently you all did really well. If I'm not mistaken, you were 5 guys playing this deck, right?
Yeah, we were 5 guys playing it, 2 Americans and me, Mees, and David.
Yeah, and I believe 3 of you made day 2, which is a very impressive feat. Very, very impressive.
We made day 2. I think we all had positive records in the end.
That's amazing. And everybody got I was following along at home and everything, and I can say safely there was a lot of people that would love to see you win with this, but you got close.
Yeah, I got really close. I felt like this was one of the few times that I felt like this was, my real shot to actually win the tournament. I definitely, after I lost top 4, I felt a bit disappointed, even though Azul played great. So all props to him.
He won with a Pokemon looked like a blimp. It's great.
I've played a lot of control decks in tournaments, and sometimes I feel like things go well, but it is maybe not, things go well because people don't really expect the deck, and at some point one of the weaknesses of the deck will probably be the end of my run. But in this tournament, the deck felt absolutely amazing. I felt happy to see all of the tier 1 matchups.
And it must have been so cool.
I really thought I could make a deep run. And of course the top 4 match was definitely an interesting matchup. I had played against Azul, I had played against Caleb, so I had played against the exact 60 2 times before in Swiss. And I had also played against Arceus Dark by Barrel with Phoebe Palpet 2 more times. It was actually my 5th time playing against Dark by Barrel with Phoebe Palpet.
Whoa.
And I did have a positive record against it at that point. So I feel like the matchup was doable. Azul played really well.
It was amazing to watch.
I made some. I think I made one pretty big error in game 1. I mean, I think also game 1 was the only game that truly mattered. I think after losing game 1, it was pretty much already over. And I think I maybe misplayed two times in game 1.
Yeah,
Although
but
one of them was
you're
a
right
bit
about that.
difficult to really judge.
Yeah. No, you're right about in the sense that after of the fact of the losing the first game, because as you say that you're happy about the deck, it went super well. It had no real weaknesses, except the inherent weakness that any control deck has in a top cut scenario. Right, that weakness you can never remove. That is that you lose on the top cut rules in this case, unfortunately. That's the way of the game, right?
Yeah, but I'm fully aware of it. Basically, when
Yeah,
you
of
go
course.
into top cut with a deck like this, you are going in with the mindset you'll have to win 2-0.
Yeah.
And if your deck is really good, you can win 2-0.
Of
I
course
mean, I
you
could
can.
have won game. I think I could have played game. Basically, in game 1, the biggest mistake I made was so he went first. I think in that matchup. I mean, it doesn't matter that much because a lot of my cards are going to be reactive anyways. But maybe if I go first, I get another Corman dice. But anyway, he goes first. He attaches to Arceus, and then on turn 2, he Marnies my Corman dice, and he KOs my Snorlax, and I promote Miltank. And my hand had Flannery and Avery in it, and I played Avery instead of the Flannery. And I think it's usually just better to like trade resources on board and like play all your board impacting cards first, and only then try to refill your hand with the Avery. So what happens is on my turn 2, he has his Arceus active with energy and DTE. He has his Pikachu charged, and I have Miltank active. And I just Avery and I do draw into a hammer. I was looking for a second Miltank because I only had one Miltank in play, and if he immediately on his third turn finds his Phoebe, him being able to go Phoebe KO and I don't have a second Miltank, he can maybe take a couple extra prizes before I find my another Miltank. So I kind of was trying to find just a second Miltank, but I think just Avery, playing Flannery on his double turbo is a way more principled way to play that. You just want to impact the board first and then only refill your hand after you've played all your board impactful cards. So I don't think that was the right play.
It makes sense now when you say it, of course, but we also always have to take into account you're sitting there on stream, a lot of stress on you. It's
I don't think it was the best game. I don't think the top 4 match was the best game to play.
No, but I still think it's 100%. It was a really enjoyable match to watch. Not gonna lie about it. That was amazing to watch, and it was a lot of stuff happening. And also one thing now, we see a lot of people, of course, try to play this deck by themselves, and it's super cool deck, and it's a lot of fun to play. But what we wanna like to try to do a little more in today's episode is maybe look into a few of the misconceptions there may be when you play this deck, because you told me, Sander, that you've seen people play the deck and you believe they sometimes make a few mistakes that could be good to know more about.
Yeah, I think there's really 2 things that I want to talk about in specific. The first one is like a priority mistake, and it's like one thing I actually immediately did wrong the first time I played the deck. So like I said, Mees kind of came up with the idea of the Mewtwo, and he took some of I think he also took some of my older ideas, like the Galarian Meowth with Snorlax. It's something, you and me, we both played that already.
Yeah,
in
super good card, yeah.
And then the Celine Loop. So basically Mees had the deck, and then he tested it and he played it, and then when I played it, the first game, I opened Snorlax, I get the second Snorlax, and I Ultra Ball, and I have Snorlax in play, and I Ultra Ball for one of the Mewtwo pieces on turn 1, so I can discard it with a Quick Ball.
Seems reasonable when you think about it.
seems completely reasonable, right?
Yeah,
you want to find the Mewtwo pieces. But actually Mees immediately pointed out to me, and I think he's completely right, that you shouldn't prioritize finding the Mewtwo pieces super early, and what you should do is actually get all your Snorlaxes. And I think that makes that's how I played the entire tournament, because it's actually really risky to not just immediately find your third and even your fourth Snorlax, because the Mewtwo pieces really don't do anything until you find all 4 of them and you find your double Psychic in your discard. So you need this whole package of 6 cards together in your discard before you actually can achieve what you want to achieve. And the way you fail to achieve that is by running out of Snorlaxes, and let's say you have Snorlax down, and you think you're safe, but suddenly you get Marnied, you don't find you don't find a quick ball of a Marnie, you can actually just lose a game because you with your third or your fourth Snorlax. So I think it's definitely something you would think you would try to find the Mewtwo pieces as quickly as possible, but it's way more important to have like way more safe actually to.
So what you're telling me, what you're actually telling me here, Sander, is that when I start the game or goes first or second, whatnot, I would like to see Quartz Snorlax on my field. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's also one of the when we were testing. I mean, I think at this point everybody knows the V-UNION mechanic is like such a wonky, weird mechanic.
True.
I mean, I think like people like this deck because of the uniqueness of V-UNIONs, but in reality the deck also is pretty annoying to play against, right? You just sit there healing forever.
Yeah, it's a pretty good attack. This super regeneration is pretty good.
Yeah, the healing attack, it's really good. But even though you're trying to get the V-UNIONs out, a lot of the time your board state is gonna look really, really weird. Like you just have quad Snorlax and a Meowth, and you just cycle through your deck over and over. But I have to say the deck did feel really consistent in achieving, especially against Palkia, because we only tested against Palkia with Echoing Horn, so we assumed every Palkia would play Echoing Horn, which means you have to get a V-UNION in play when your opponent only has 2 prizes left.
Yeah.
Because if you do it when they have 1 prize left, they can Echoing Horn and boss and you lose. But we were actually really successful in just turboing through the deck, especially when we added the researches and the Rose Tower, and we went just full turbo, and a full turbo engine. And the deck is actually pretty well set up to get the V-UNION in play on like.
And the trekking shoes are pretty good too, I assume. Given
those shoes are amazing. So that kind of leads me into like the second point is what can you actually discard from the the Saline loop? And I think the Saline loop is also something that isn't intuitively, it's kind of hard to like gauge what exactly are the odds. If you look into the odds, you kind of, because sometimes you have to do some amount of risk management. Sometimes you have to, like, let's say you're digging towards the Mewtwo combo, right? And you also need the Psychics in the discard. So you need a lot of cards in your discard to do everything you want in one turn.
Makes sense.
And sometimes you have like a Palpet and you're wondering, should I discard it? Should I play it? But do I really want to shuffle in a Saline into my deck right now? But because I want to have a better odds of finding the cards I need. So sometimes it's kind of like difficult to know how many Salines can I discard, how many Palpets can I discard, and how many Yelchirs can I discard and still be safe enough. So, and the other thing that people wonder is like the quote-unquote infinite loop. It's coin flip based, isn't it? Aren't you gonna lose to too many tills?
Sure, and I think something a lot of people they have a conception about infinite means truly infinite, but
it's like
there's also this is practically infinite. That's the way I would like to see it, at least.
So to look at like a couple numbers, it's really easy math. It's just it's really easy to calculate all this stuff. So if you have everything if you have double Saline, double Palpet, and 1 Yelchir, you get 20 coin flips. Because you have Saline, which is 4 coin flips. Then you Yelchir for Saline, so you get another double Saline, so you have 8 flips. And then you Palpet, but you don't Palpet for Saline, you Palpet for Yelchir Saline.
Exactly.
So you have 1 Saline, and then you Yelchir for double Saline. So 1 Palpet will give you 6 coin flips, because it will give you triple Saline. And so the double Palpet gives you another 12 coin flips, and you had 8 from double Saline and Yelchir.
Yeah.
So in total, there's 20 coin flips, and if you do 2 over 20, it's 1 in a million that you flip. I mean, a bit more than 1 in a million that you flip 20 tails.
Assuming a fair coin, obviously, right?
Assuming a fair coin. Yeah, exactly.
All the standard assumptions, but you can think about you need to have 20 tails in a row. Very important in a row.
And if you flip like 18 tails, and then you flip 1 hats, you get another 6 coin flips. And also, I guess the thing that people maybe do not realize is that you do generate resources. It is like an infinite loop, but it's not only an infinite loop. You are actually going to create resources. Because So I guess this is also a pretty interesting point about this Saline loop. Is like what actually is the rate of recovery, which is kind of interesting.
This
And
sounds like Heatmore all over again,
it
Sander.
sounds like Heatmore. I think, what is actually really interesting about the Saline loop is the bottleneck of the Saline loop in this deck, especially in this version of the deck, because we tried cards like Cinccino and by Barrel, is the efficiency of recovery is actually held back by the lack of card draw. Because with Saline you put cards on top of your deck, not in your hand. And with Yelchir you put cards into your deck, and with Palpatch you put cards into your deck. So all of these cards kind of shuffle cards into your deck, but they are not going to draw the cards themselves. So you could technically generate like one card every 2 turns, given you flip like one heads on every Saline, just for simplicity's sake. But the problem is that it actually doesn't really work if you have no card draw, no additional card draw. So in reality, if you only draw one card every turn, you are actually only going to generate like one card every 4 turns. Except you can, this is actually the reason why we played the Avery. And the Avery, you might think, oh, it's nice against Palkia. We started off with like double Avery because we thought it was nice against Palkia, but we were, like when you get into the Mewtwo, it's actually so easy to win against Palkia. You don't really need the extra disruption from the Avery anyways. It's like overkill.
You basically don't need to do anything, right? At that point.
So we tried Avery at first, and then we were like, oh, we can beat Palkia without the Avery, and we couldn't. But the next game when we didn't play the Avery, we immediately realized that it's a mistake. You actually need one draw supporter that just flat out draws 3 cards, and this is important, especially if you have to like chain Cook. To like if your opponent is Duraludon and they hit 220 every turn, or you're playing against Arceus with quick shooting and they have like slightly above 200 damage output. You want to use a Cook every 3 turns, and to achieve this, you want to Yelchir for Cook, Saline, and Avery, and then you Saline the Yelchir back, and then you basically play your Avery to make up to draw the cards to like even out on card draw over those 3 turns, because you're shuffling back 3 cards with Yelchir, and you're putting 1 card back with Saline. So you actually are like lacking in card draw. If you play the deck like a couple games, you'll notice like you're using a lot of Salines, but you're actually the issue is that you could be creating card if you had like a Cinccino in play or a by Barrel in play. You would be actually being more efficient in your looping and in your resource recovery. But to make up for this, it is like a plus in efficiency to shuffle in the Avery. So just one flat draw 3 cards supporter is pretty crucial. You definitely sometimes need it. Like if you price the Avery against decks where you want to do this Cook loop, you have to Peonia it.
It's quite fun to see, Sander, because of course we see 2 Peonia, which makes perfect sense because you need to make sure you hit all the Mewtwo pieces. Obvious. But also one thing you do note when you play this, that was the thing with Eldegoss. This deck can function with just 1 Mewtwo in play. Like you can have nothing else in play. And not even Marnie can come and really beat you at that point.
Yeah, you don't really lose to Marnie. That's also like the reason why we ended up not playing by Barrel or Cinccino, or I guess you could play like the Venusaur, the Radiant Venusaur from the Neo set. Like all these draw supporters that sit on the bench, they are, if you have them in play, they're great, but your opponent can boss them. And the main thing why we ended up like going pure Snorlax Meowth and just wanting to end up with like solo Mewtwo and use like the Avery if we want extra card draw, is because against Palkia you specifically don't want any bench because it decreases their damage output. So it made no sense to play like a Cinccino line or a by Barrel line, and then you put it into play, and then when you get the Mewtwo, you scoop up your draw engine back into your hand, and at that point you're like, well, why are we even playing, a bench sitting draw engine when we don't want it into play at the end, anyways?
That's such an interesting thing,
Yeah, but so I was playing like some other Saline, Palpatch, Yelchir loops, and the loop actually gets stronger if you do have a draw engine in play, which is kind of an interesting because it's not only because you are kind of lacking in card draw, so you are recovering cards with Saline and with Yelchir and with Palpatch, and you're putting more cards in your deck than you're drawing, so some turns you have to draw and not play a supporter. It's also because you're not drawing all of your supporters in the right order. Sometimes you are like missing out on turns you want to. Like sometimes you have a Saline in your deck, but you just haven't drawn it, so you have to like wait until you have the Saline to like get the optimal Yeltier value. Sometimes you have like a Yeltier in hand, but you want to wait until you draw your second Saline before, so you can Yeltier for double Saline to be more efficient. But because of the lack of card draw, you have to like quote unquote waste your turns just waiting for draw for turn from the next turn. So it is an interesting. The loop in this deck it isn't extremely efficient. It's actually pretty efficient in recovering supporters.
It's amazing. It's simply amazing to hear all the thought that goes into this, because people, like, and myself included, so you see just Yeltier and Saline, you get, okay, you after a few seconds you're like, okay, I can see why this can keep going, but that there's also so much math and so much ideas behind, like when you explained the Cook, Avery, Saline, the whole thing there. There's so many extra layers to it that I don't think everybody gets, not at least straight away. It's super cool.
Yeah. So I think what helped was that I was, the Mewtwo deck came up with like maybe 5 days before the event, but I was already heavily testing. I was basically only testing like other decks with this Saline loop, and so I can. So I think there's 2 more interesting things about the Saline loop.
Let's take a look at it.
The first is like, how much risk are you really, can you really take? Let's say you have like a Pokémon in your hand and you have a Pokémon in your deck, and you have discarded your double Saline and Yeltier. Like, can you discard a second Pokémon? Because if you can technically start a whole loop from 1 Pokémon, but you would lose if you flip 6 tails. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of risk management, but we kind of found out that you can discard a lot of the loop. You can basically go off with, like, in the end, we thought that if you have 1 Pokémon, 1 Scoop Net, and 1 energy, and you have the Mewtwo in your discard pile with the 2 basic energies, you only kind of need those 3 cards, and the rest of the loop kind of builds itself back from that point. As long as you don't flip 6 tails. So you could do it with 1 Pokémon. Sometimes I honestly think sometimes it's better to prize one of your Pokémons, because the Pokémon being in your prizes, you don't have immediate access to it, but it means that if you draw into it, because you have to discard a lot of cards to actually find all your pieces.
Makes sense.
Having a Pokémon in your prizes is kind of like a safer spot for it than in your deck when you are going to draw into it and like waste it, kind of. But yeah, sometimes you have to like do a little bit of risk management. Like sometimes it's safe. Like if you are like great odds to find everything you need, you can maybe keep an extra Pokémon in your hand instead of discarding it, and maybe gourmandizing for 1 less card. And if you have double Pokémon, you get 12 coin flips to start the whole loop, which is 12 coin flips is already extremely safe.
You have to think about it. Like there's always a point where people start thinking, it's nature that people are very risk averse, but also like
and they think about the worst case scenario, right?
Exactly.
If I'm gonna flip all tails, and I'm just, I mean, it would be it would be like a silly loss, right? You do all this work, you do all this stuff.
In this case.
Yeah, you do everything, you get the Mewtwo in play, and you flip 6 tails and you lose the game. I mean, it would be like a very anticlimactic way to lose.
Yeah, and everybody would tend to think this. People would be like, yeah, but I don't believe this because I am so unlucky I'm going to flip 6 tails.
Yeah, and they have like, when that happens, it will stick in your memory forever, even though the odds are like, statistically speaking, not that high.
This should be fine.
6 coin flips can fail. Like 4 coin flips is 6 points. Like there are also times when it comes down to like only like you only like sometimes to find everything you need to discard so many cards that you are running really thin on the resources you have left to get into the late game loop. So we definitely in testing we had like spots where we only have 4 coin flips, and if you flip 4 tails you lose, but and that is like 6.25%, like a bit more than 6%.
And you would think about
still fine, but it's not.
You're a statistician. You've done your statistics, right? So this is around the 5%. We're getting down that mark where everybody starts drawing the significance line, right? So to speak.
Exactly.
So we're getting
and then I guess one more thing about the Saline and Pokémon stuff and this loop
Yeah.
is when we were building the deck, we were really thinking how much do we need and how little do we need, how much do we need? Do we
Yeah.
need triple saline, double saline? Do we need one pulpet, double pulpet? And I was thinking because the loop is pretty efficient, and with if you, let's say you play one pulpet and the double saline and one yellow chair,
Yeah.
you still have in total you will still have 14 flips,
Yeah.
which is a lot if you have all your resources. So we were kind of considering the one pulpit. At least I was considering it because I really valued like it really it's like the same with the Snorlax thing, right? You
Yeah.
really want to focus on this turbo engine aspect. The V-UNION mechanic is so wonky, you really need all the turbo stuff to make it work.
Yeah.
But the thing about one pulpit is also the way variance works is that sometimes you're gonna hit like a period of very high variance, and sometimes you hit a period of very low variance. And having extra pulpits lets you kind of like build a buffer. You hit a patch of high variance. So if like let's say you flip 10 tails in a row, it's pretty unlikely. Or like I think in the top four, flip maybe 7 tails in a row.
Yeah, you did a lot of tails in a row, that's for
You
sure.
you can hit a lot of tails. But
Yeah.
if you also had like a period where you flip like 3 or 4 tails in a row, if you play the double pulpit, it means you can accumulate more of a buffer. And then when you hit like a period where you flip a lot of tails, you actually have some buffer left from the time when you actually hit a lot of heads. So playing the second pulpit also is like a lot safer, not only because the amount of like straight up flips is higher, but also because it allow like if you were only playing one pulpit and you flip like a lot of heads in a row, you cannot get back double pulpit because you only play one pulpit.
No.
And then if you flip a lot of heads followed by a lot of tails, you don't have the same buffer. And if you play double pulpit, you have like this. You can kind of like be prepared for the bad patches of variance by building a buffer during the good patches of variance.
Oh, this is fantastic to hear all these thoughts about this, Sander, I must say. But now, I want to ask something that I don't know if other people thought this, but I wanted to see this, but unfortunately it didn't happen. But what if, and now I'm saying what if, there would be a mirror match on this deck here? What's gonna happen?
We were and we were also really confident in the deck. I mean, I've of course played the control style type of decks during the whole season, but this deck felt so great. I was pretty confident. I was more confident than any other tournament I've played this season, and maybe pre-COVID. So we were kind of looking forward to maybe play a mirror at some point. Because the mirror, it's like one of the maybe few times that a control mirror actually comes down to who can be more aggressive in attacking and doing damage. I think it's I'm trying to think about like I mean sometimes in Orangu mirrors you would like profound knowledge to like 60 and confuse.
Yeah, because of the confusion,
like, yeah, it was like more of like a like if you're in a really advantageous position, it was like one way. It definitely happened, and I definitely have done that. But in this Mewtwo mirror, because Miltank cannot wall against the Cyclosion because it goes through the
yeah, it's put damage,
body.
right? So yeah,
it puts damage, and then against Mewtwo itself, the 300 damage output is too high to heal the 200, right? So the final burn also 2 shots Mewtwo or 3 shots it. So the mirror actually comes down to getting the Mewtwo in play. It's really weird. It's pretty weird with the Union game being super efficient against Crushing Hammer, but you kind of also need like the twin energies to do final burn. So Flannery and Sydney become weirdly important. There's like a lot of random coin flips with the Salines and the hammers.
I wanted to see this so bad.
It's like a race to who gets his Exodia into play first. It's like I think it's like one of the strangest control mirrors that, in my opinion, has existed. Usually the control mirrors. I actually liked the control mirrors when we had Giraffe.
I remember really that we even played them before in different League Cups down in the Netherlands where we had the Richie Gigas mirrors.
In on hand also was like an interesting mirror. Nah, it was like I didn't really like in on hand mirrors that much. Like at some point I was really trying to find other tags for an on-hand mirrors. I was like playing the Noibat that discards every item from your opponent.
Yeah.
Trying to like psych them out and trying to like bluff that you're doing an on-hand race, and then when they have 30, you discard like 20 items from their hand, and then they cannot win anymore. That was like one way in the on-hand mirror that I was trying to do something else.
Amazing.
But in this mirror, the mirror is just the actual game. It's super real. You actually are just playing Pokemon. There's no like stupid degenerate stuff. It's just V-Union. It's just a V-Union war, and you're very low energy, but you know if you do 300, it's pretty hard to respond.
It's amazing. It's so cool to see that against any other deck you play control, like you play control store, whatever people want to call it, but in the mirror it becomes regular Pokemon.
Exactly. It becomes like as if you're playing a fair, normal, non-control. I mean, you still have some control elements, but you basically are just a beatdown deck. You just try to. Your game plan is punching harder than your opponent.
That is not what anybody would have expected, but okay. Yeah. I learned something today.
Yeah. So also the deck, I think I won way more. You basically always win on prizes instead of deck out, because people they try to like defend deck out with Marnie, Palpet, Marnie.
How does that feel, Sander? You don't normally win on prizes. How does that feel?
It's pretty relevant if people try to like play a 50-minute game one. But
Fair.
Mewtwo wins so quickly, and like I said, the resource recovery is not extremely efficient. You get maybe like one free card every 4 turns.
Yeah.
I think a little bit higher if you also chain in the Avery. And also recovering supporters like Boss and Sydney and Flannery is more efficient than recovering other cards. But so against like Arceus, what you're gonna do is you're just gonna keep on bossing every other turn. You're gonna play a lot of hammers. The turn they don't attack into the Mewtwo, you win really quickly. So I had a lot of games where it's just 40 minutes. They try to like survive, like against Arceus. I mean, they try to like keep the game going with their Marnies to not deck out. But at some point, if they get stuck with a Sobble or they get stuck with they have to charge double Arceus, right?
Yeah.
Because if they only have one Arceus, you just final burn it and they lose.
you just remove it from game.
You just win, And so a lot of the games were like 40 minutes. They try to struggle to like not deck out, and then you just boss hammer for 40 minutes, and then the moment they get stuck, you win in 3 turns. So a lot of the games, the games is like it's like instantly over because you have to keep hitting into the Mewtwo. If you don't hit into the Mewtwo, the Mewtwo is gonna hit you back for a lot of damage. So also, if you really want to win quicker, we were like considering Spirit Mask, or a Rocky Helmet, or Horror Energy. Horror Energy is interesting.
Yeah. Oh, very.
Because it's not a tool, so sometimes you definitely want a tool jammer.
Yeah.
So
to
if you
really
really want to win
choice
quicker,
belts and such. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. We were also considering like an extra healing card, like Team Yell Towel, and that way you could build up towards a turn of Cook plus Team Yell Towel together to heal 120, and then that allows you to do the 300 damage because you don't need the healing attack, right, for 1 turn if you have double heal cards.
Yeah, either that or you go Cyplosion, right? Like anything that just do full damage.
Yeah, Cyplosion is really good. It's also really good to like Cyplosion their quick shooting Inteleon. Like the sniping is so useful. And you can also like set up like taking 6 prizes in 1 turn with a Cyplosion.
Oh, and that means that Moltres and
the attacks on the
Roxanne
Mewtwo are just super strong.
That means Galarian Moltres, Roxanne, all these things are less of a problem. That's so cool.
Yeah. You Galarian Moltres, the baby Galarian Moltres, the basic is not the problem because you don't have to take prizes.
No, amazing. And I think on those words, I think will be the end of today's episode, and really got a lot of cool, interesting things, and some definitely new to me and perhaps to some of you out there. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and again, Sander, thank you so much for taking the time to come here today, and again, congratulations with your fantastic top 4 at the recent NAIC.
Let's hope at some point I can actually win a tournament.
Hey,
I know what I'm getting into.
Worlds is coming up. Oh, perfect time. And then I just got disconnected from PGO, so perfect time to say that was all, folks. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope to see you back for another class here in Stefan's classroom. And bye, Sander, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.